and it's another wonderful day here in the Pirate Broadcast. And I'm excited. It's another week in February, and it's President's Day here in the US. And I have a lot going on this week, and I just wanted to invite another wonderful guest. Linda Tilson is here in the room. We've been connected for some time, Linda, and how are you today?
I'm excellent. And I'm glad that we actually get to do this because you're right. We've been connected for quite some time now. And so to get to do it face to face is wonderful.
Yeah, this is fascinating because I had Anton on, and I know you guys used to work hand in hand, and I know you got a lot of things going on. So tell us how you got here on LinkedIn and what's your journey for LinkedIn and what are you doing right now? And share with us, kind of get us caught up to speed on what's happening in your world.
Absolutely. So I got on LinkedIn because I found it was fascinating that it was no longer the application that you would go on to look for a job. It was much more. It was about community building, about meeting people to participate in projects. And that is how Anton and I got started. And so really, I learned the value of connection. So when I posted on a few different individuals' accounts, we started the normal posting of likes and comments, but then people would say, well, let's take it offline. And so then you would meet somebody on a Zoom call or Facebook or any of the other mediums so you could actually have a conversation. And so that's when people started asking about what is that you do, what inspires and motivates you. And then you'd find out the person on the other end also had the same interests, and then you'd figure out ways to combine them.
Well, I love that. And I read a post by Kurt Mercadante over the weekend, and the premise was, and it's a multi-part post, and this is part one, and this is really important for us to understand and think about because likes and comments don't, fill the bank account, right? And I think a lot of people really limit themselves by thinking that social media is going to solve their problem, when in reality, social media is just another tool to actually start a conversation. And the idea that he posed was, why don't you start focusing in on your target market to be able to generate leads for your business, rather than just posting general things and hoping everybody likes it, right?
Yes.
So I know that in the process of generating conversation and everything else, one of my goals is there's a lot of people that can use kindness in their world, and there's a lot of people that can just find out what other people are doing, so they have an opportunity to share something about what they're doing. And it's always fascinating to me about what people do and how they do it and why they do it. It's like, so you're doing what you're doing right now, which is, we'll get into, but it's because you took a journey to get there, right?
Yes.
And it's not a straight line. It's not like you woke up one day and said, hey, this is what I'm going to do. It's kind of like back and forth. And it's like, okay, well, I tried this and that didn't really feel like I wanted to do that anymore. And then you did something else. And, we had this opportunity to try a bunch of different things as we develop our careers. So talk about how you got to where you are, and what is it that you do to help people, and how do you, I know you have a podcast and you're doing this thing, so kind of get us up to focus on what Linda's doing right now.
Okay, and so you're right that as you go through different experiences, you can find out what you're good at and what you like to do. And you also can find out some of the things that maybe don't really fit what you should be doing. And so one of the things I like to share with people through my interactions is do the things that energize you and do more of them. And when you do that, it's infectious. And really, I never thought that I would be doing my own podcast. So I always thought that it would be fun to be on other people's podcasts. And so the paradigm shifted when I actually commented on a post, and the post asked for Mark Metry, what is your podcast if you have one, and who is your ideal guest? And then he said on the flip side, who would you be an ideal guest for? And so again, I put something on there, and I ended up getting a couple leads, which was wonderful, but I was surprised that one of them wanted to be on mine. Okay. It's because I'm new at the podcasting. And so I thought, well, this person's been on hundreds of them. And then here they are, they want to be on mine. I'm doing the right thing. And the theme that I picked is resiliency. And the reason why I picked that, and something that stood out to me as I heard on a TED Talk, is that adversity does not discriminate. And I thought, that's powerful.
That
It's
is
simple.
powerful.
It's simple, but really it doesn't come. Things don't come when you can take care of them best. It doesn't choose only the bad people or the good people. And so the whole idea around resiliency, and I've been, I guess, a real advocate in saying that society's view of resiliency and mine are a lot different. I think society says you should adapt and overcome.
Mhm.
And the moment that you start doing the adapting, you might be able to overcome, but not until you get to that inner self. When you figure out the things that are going on that either move you towards resiliency or take you away. And for each person, that's very different and personal.
Hmm.
And when I started doing some research on the things that would help people, I was realizing that if you can take 6 categories of wellness and you can break those down and really answer each question individually with a lot of thought, help, and hinder,
Mhm.
it can move you to a place of much deeper reflection where you can start to build a plan around when these stressors or triggers come, what you can do to either not experience them at all, or if you do experience them, not to stay there for very long. And so I just think it's really important to help people not be the victim, get out of stuck mode. And so that's been my area of focus.
I love that. And let's break it down a little bit, because I think there's a lot of information that you just shared that it's like, okay, so resiliency and adversity, there's no discrimination whatsoever, right?
Yes.
And it's on both sides of the equation, because when you come up against one person's crisis, maybe another person's no big deal.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And it's because of what we're doing inside ourselves and how we react and respond to those individual, let's say, triggers or episodes in our life, right?
Yes.
So just to make sure I'm framing this correctly, and maybe you can go a little deeper on this, is like, whether it be losing a job, a spouse, a parent, or winning a prize, or getting a promotion, or doing these things, there's a excitement and enthusiasm or an emotional attachment to these things, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that for myself, this is just me, and this is, I try not to get too excited or too depressed over anything. It's an experience, and I just notice that experience and say, okay, well, how does it impact me, and how does it affect me? How do I feel about it? Because I've had, a lot of adversity. I've had a lot of experience. I've had a lot of excitement. I've had good things and bad things. And I'm becoming to the point in my life where it's like, I just have that. I just notice these experiences, and it gives me balance in my life. And I know a lot of people get upset and really depressed, and a lot of anxiety and anxiousness. So how do we learn how to navigate from one to the next, and where does that take us, and how do we learn how to change our emotional state?
That's a very good question, and I'll try to unpack that the best that I can. But by looking at all the 6 areas, they bleed into each other. And so if you're looking at your physical, you need to make sure that you're getting proper rest, you're eating properly, exercising. If you're not doing that, something happens to you that's stressful, you're not going to react in the way that you should, and which is you should respond, not react. If you're in a place where your emotional state, you're saying that you could go far into depression, or you could go too far into the excitement, you've got to really know what you need from yourself and others to be able to navigate that. And so by taking the inventory, you get a deeper sense of self.
Mhm.
And then as you identify the different triggers or the things that help you, then you're able to think about, okay, what does resiliency look like for Linda? What does resiliency look like for Russ? And when you can have that picture to frame what that would look like, because you
Mhm.
know what it doesn't look like. And the analogy that I like to use, if you blow up a balloon and you let it go across the room, you're all over the place, right? So that is where you don't want to be. But where you want to be is that calm, collective place where you're confident in what you're doing, you're moving through life, and sure, things are going to come at you, but you're not going to get stuck in that deep place. And so by knowing your triggers and by knowing that ideal state, the other piece is you've got to have some action items that will go towards that, because you can say, I want to be resilient. I want to react or respond well to things. And if you don't put the actions to it, you're not going to get there in quite the same way. And so I encourage people to really take the inventory. Once you sit down and do the inventory, you have the foundation that you can work from. And then you look at your current state of where you are and where you need to go to, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, it does. It's we all have deficits, and I think we're blind a lot of times to
Mm-hmm.
the truth of what our state is, right?
Yes.
And when we decide we want to really focus in on our true self and take inventory on what our skills and our abilities are, and some of the emotional attachments we have to things, then it always, we can't lie to ourselves when we have an inventory of reality, right?
Well, you can, but then it's not going to help you move
But
forward.
it's
It's going
not
to hinder
helping.
you.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So really, when you boil it down, you say, okay, this is who I am, and this is why I'm here, and this is some of the things that I can offer the world. And I think the more clarity we have in our world, the better off we are. And that's what's really brought me a lot of pieces, because investigating who I am, and some of the things that I find joy in, some of the triggers that are attached to my ideas and thoughts. And when I develop that process, and I'm not doing it consciously or anything like that, I'm just going through the experiences, it's so much more peaceful. It's like,
It is. So your definition of resiliency is being in that peaceful state. And I have to agree with you that for me, it's showing up to who I am and not adapting to what someone else or wants me to be, because that was one of my things. Every time I had to change who I was to be able to exist in a certain environment,
uh-huh.
then it wasn't serving me. And so I knew that sometimes my choices is I need to leave the place that's not serving me. And so I've done that. And believe me, if you're a high performing person, the whole idea of quitting and moving on, that doesn't sit well. But what I
No.
realized when I left those situations, when I took that inventory and they weren't for me, that I was able to take myself to a whole nother level, and definitely peace is one of them.
Well, I work really hard to find some joy every day in my life, and get centered in that. And I think it's really good. And this show really helps me do that, because I see new perspectives. I understand what other people are doing around me, and I could take inventory and how that relates to what I'm doing, and how I can, fit in this thing we call the world. I want to give a shout out to a few people on here on the Pirate Broadcast, and I just thank you so much for everyone being here today. All the gratitude. I love that you're here, Gabriel, Brenda, out of Metro Detroit, uh, Marius, Lisa, Amy Kilgore. Hey, Amy, love your posts, by the way, and Lisa, love the kindness journey. Amy Kilgore, good morning. Um, Sherry Lawley, good morning. The pirate crew here. Wendy, good morning, Wendy. Maureen, how are you? Sending love. Lisa Fenton, thank you so much. Pirate crew. Steve Sullivan, amazing. Have a wonderful day. There's so many people here that really Lisa O'Neill or Vicky O'Neill, thank you so much for being here. I'm just trying to read this in my non-caffeinated eyes. So, Angie, thank you so much for being here. Important to understand triggers. That is so key. Sometimes identifying the root cause of the problem, knowing who and where to turn to is helpful. Vicky, that's wise. That's wisdom beyond years. I know. When we're honest with ourselves, it helps determine next steps. So talk about that. Once we, and this is a continuous process in my thought process.
Oh, it is. You're building a muscle. And so like anything, you can let it relapse. You can make it stronger. You're not done. You're always going to be working as long as you're alive.
Yeah. And I know that, some of the, Stoic philosophy is that, if you just notice things around you rather than react to them, it's really, it kind of balances us out in a way that we can actually be more observant and more responsible. And I think being responsible for who we are is really key to our growth, because we don't necessarily want to be a victim. Like you said, don't be a victim. Don't say poor, pitiful me. You have a choice. You have an opportunity to change the way you respond and react to things and circumstances, right?
Yes,
What are
absolutely.
some tools we can use to really initiate some little changes in our world and maybe just start thinking about this in a positive way?
Okay, well, you touched upon some of them. So you're also looking at the things that will guide you in the right direction. So being gratitude for where you are. Maybe if you are able to have a situation where you would normally have been triggered and done something that wasn't responsible or something that wasn't helping you, when you realize that, you're like, oh, well, I responded a little bit better this time. Give yourself some grace and credit when you're making the small steps towards where you're going. That's one thing. The gratitude is always huge about thinking about things as being full rather than empty. Another thing is using your support systems. And so reaching out for help is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing.
I'm going to phone a friend here. I'm having a trigger.
Yes.
Help me.
Yes. And so for different people, it comes up in different forms, because you talked about being stoic. Well, for me, I had someone tell me when things were difficult to be like Teflon, let it bounce off of you. And I'm like, I'm too emotional of a person to just like not care and let it bounce off. But I found some other ways that maybe were similar, but that wasn't for me. And so people will give you ideas of what can work, and maybe it'll work for you and maybe it won't. and you can try different things. And so what I found really worked the best is just having a conversation or heart to heart with somebody else that had that place where they could listen without judgment and just give me another perspective. Getting other perspectives of how to enter into a situation that's tough is one of the things that helped. And not that long ago, I had a conversation with somebody that had a similar thing happen to them. And I'm thinking, I wish I would have heard that about 6 months ago, because that really would have helped me, hearing their story of how they worked in an environment that wasn't the best and it was hard. And they eventually were able to leave the environment and come out on the other side, and they're highly successful. So the storytelling with another person, that's another great strategy.
I really, I can reflect on that, because many times, whether it's friends or family, just talking through a process and a circumstance, it's like, well, can you change it? Do you have influence over it? Yes or no? Can you do anything about it? Does worry help you process this? No.
No.
It's like a reality distortion field. We get in this bubble where we're really emotionally triggered, or the amplification of our emotions just like blow up. And it's really hard to see and take inventory of ourselves when we're in that moment, right?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying is that when you start to figure out the triggers by doing the inventory, you can catch yourself. And you touched upon something that I have to mention is when you start thinking about the things that you can control and the things that you cannot, you can control yourself. You can't control anyone else. And I like something that someone brought up once, and so I'm real big into pictures and analogies. And someone said that imagine yourself in a hula hoop.
Mhm.
So you can decide who can come in and who can stay out. And
Yeah.
so when you get into that frame where you're experiencing something that you want to have control over and it's another person, you can decide to let them come into your hula hoop or not, right? And so you can influence them, you can tell them how you feel, but at the end of the day, you can't change the way they might view the world. They have to come to what that is. And so I say a whole lot about telling people what you need from them, because sometimes you need people to come in or not come in a certain way. And if you don't voice that, they're never going to know. So that is another strategy as well. And so that one, I've had to learn boundaries.
Mm.
Boundaries, I always thought of boundaries as bad. And that's because I'm a very open, giving, caring person. And so I'm not looking to keep people out. I like to have people coming in, but at some point, boundaries help you be safe. And then when you're saying what you don't need from somebody, that's a healthy behavior. And that's one that I had to develop. And so, when you're working through resiliency, you're not always going to do it right. You're going to have that balloon going around the room, but you're going to have that happen a lot less often as you really get in tune with yourself.
Well, I think really a key point that you brought up there was this boundaries idea, because there are some times where you just need to vent and you just need someone to listen and not necessarily help you solve a problem. There's not a problem that you want to solve. You just need to let it out, voice your thoughts so you can articulate an idea to get it, kind of develop it a little further. And then sometimes you need someone to actually, be tough love and say, Russ, you're not really thinking this through clearly. and here's a couple of key points you need to consider. It's like, don't be a victim. It's like, okay, that's when you want a friend that can really call you out on your victimhood, right?
Yes. And I have friends on both lines, and it's wonderful when, there's times, like you said, you need to vent, and you need to do that to the right person, because some people, that's not for them. And so you got to know that too. And sometimes you have to ask permission before you unload for some individuals. And so that's important to keep into perspective. And then there's the other ones, like you said, they got to say, Linda, you're in the victim mode. You need to get out of that. This is what I observe you doing. Have you considered trying this? And so that whole being coached or coaching someone, that's always live and relevant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And you're not always aware internally about the friend that you need.
Yes, that's
until
true.
The process starts, Sometimes you have to create the boundary as this process is going through the process, It's like,
it is, because sometimes you could be venting and the other person feels like you're unloading your baggage. So you don't want to have that for the person. That's not being kind.
yeah.
And so, yes.
So you're starting a podcast, you're getting this podcast underway. What's the podcast called?
Okay. So the podcast is called Guiding Light. And how I came up with the name is because I've been working with a branding coach, Rich Keller, and he has taught me so much. So everyone has an idea of what they bring as their gifts, but when you can really isolate it down into one word and you can live that as your truth, it becomes so powerful. And so my word is beacon. So being that guiding light, and, helping frame up things for other people, and they're doing the work to do what they need to do, whether they're moving towards resiliency, or they are working on their confidence, or they're going out to interview for a position. All of those things are interconnected in really empowering and lighting up somebody's light. Because, when someone believes in you, you can, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
When you feel good about what you're doing, you can apply it to all areas of your life. And so at a young age, I've always been that person, or that people could come to, that I would offer perspectives. I would shine the light when it was dark in some cases. And I just want people to be able to have that grace with themselves, that confidence to move forward in whatever it is. And so for me, having the podcast, I have people that have lived in adverse moments or in adverse periods of their life. And so when they come on my show, they're able to talk with humility about where they were, the things that they did to move over to where they are now. And again, that storytelling is so inspiring. If you can see somebody else that went through all these things, that maybe that little thing that's been triggering you and it's been standing in your way, it's not so big anymore. I mean, and it's not to say that one person's adverse moment is any more than somebody else's, because that's not it.
Yeah. And it's not for us to judge what level of adversity is someone else is going through because of their circumstance. Because, I mean, have a little compassion and empathy for others going through whatever they're going through. You know, it's just kind of like you're having your opinion on how you're feeling. It's not a judgment, and it's just, that's why I really, kindness is cool, and it's something that we can all share regardless of our circumstance or adversity. And I believe that, people like yourself that are, a beacon in this world, shining their light out, saying, hey, there is hope, there is kindness, there is a little bit of belief and faith in humanity here. So let's kind of stick together and make sure we're traveling in the same direction. We're all flying through the universe on this planet. It's like same sunshine, same oxygen. Let's get together and do this thing in a positive way. Let's not worry about the negative circumstances. And I really applaud you for starting that out. And I believe that everyone has a voice. I'm creating some amazing things. And, I see others around me that are doing some amazing things, like, creating the guiding light in a podcast, and hopefully, we can tune in and check it out and see what you're doing, and leave it in the comments, Linda, and make sure that you share that with the audience and the
absolutely
community. And it's really about what we can contribute to others around us. It's that circumstance that we can actually generate a little bit of enthusiasm about what we're doing in life. And I think it goes back to, like you mentioned, when we're confident about what is going on around us, and we're confident about what we're doing because we know and understand, and we've taken that inventory of our life. We've taken that inventory of how we feel about things and the circumstances we're in and the direction we want to go, and have a little intention. I think it's a really powerful tool. So
yes, having that visualization and intention combined with the things that you can do, you do all three, you can have the triple home run.
Yeah. So how do people, and what is, just before we wrap up here, Linda, I want to make sure that if you had one thing to share with the universe today, everybody in the world and the community here, what would you want to share to make a difference today?
I think what I would want to share is that life is what you make it, and we all have a voice in it. And as long as we have faith, hope, and love, all things are possible.
I love that. So thank you so much. I really, I know that we can actually improve our circumstance around us. We can improve the thoughts and the feelings we're having toward others. We can sit in traffic and not have to be panicked about what's going on around us. And it's just like, find a little joy in your day. So what do you do for laughing and being happy nowadays? What are you doing?
I think it's still the same as, I need to be connected with people. And so whether I'm at work, whether I'm on LinkedIn or any of the other social channels, it's always my goal to just bring the happiness to everywhere I go. And if somebody needs an ear to listen, I'm there. If somebody wants to celebrate an achievement, I'm there. And so that's what makes me happy, is to be in both of those worlds where you can do one small thing for somebody and it can become the biggest thing for them. And you just never know when those moments are. So just being kind every day is, for me, what brings me joy.
Fantastic. Well, Linda, thank you so much for being here. I'm fortunate that we had an opportunity to connect and talk about a little bit of your emotional states, your attitudes, how to get unstuck from your self,
Yes.
change your circumstance and enjoy life a little bit more. So thank you, all the gratitude in the world, and I appreciate you. And I'm glad that we're connected. So, and as always, kindness is cool, smiles are free, and you enjoy the day. Thank you, Linda. Much love.
Thank you.